And you're watching World This Morning. In other news now, the Crimean Platform Summit called by Ukraine to build up pressure on Russia over the 2014 annexation that has been denounced as illegal by most of the world. Top officials from 46 countries and blocs took part in the summit, including from the United States, the European Union and Turkey. All 30 NATO member states were represented at the summit. Let's take a look at more details here.
It's the second day of the Crimea summit in Ukraine's Kyiv. The Crimean Platform Summit was called by the Ukraine to build a pressure on Russia over the 2014 annexation that has been denounced as illegal by most of the world. Top officials from 46 countries and blocs took part in the summit, including from the United States, the European Union and Turkey. All 30 NATO member states were also represented at the summit. At first, it was the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau who spoke at the virtual summit. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced new sanctions on 62 individuals. He further announced one defense sector entity which he said was complicit in Russia's war in Ukraine. Trudeau attended the summit from Toronto along with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz.
We're announcing new sanctions on 62 additional individuals and one defense sector entity that is complicit in Russia's war in Ukraine. We should all be deeply concerned about the consequences of Russia's war, both in Ukraine and around the world. This includes inflation as well as economic, energy, and food insecurity.
Notably, German Chancellor pledged his country's support for Ukraine on the second day of the Crimean Platform Summit in Kyiv. He further adds that he condemns the attempts which were made by Russia to forcefully annex parts of Ukraine.
We condemn Russia's attempts to forcefully integrate parts of Ukrainian territory. Our message is clear. Any sham referenda or other attempts to alter the status of parts of Ukraine territory will never be recognized.
Scholz asserted that with the help of European Union's Executive Commission, he will be hosting a high-level expert conference for the reconstruction of Ukraine in Berlin in October.
The international community also has to engage actively in the long-term reconstruction of Ukraine. Bearing in mind the size of the challenge, we need to accelerate the work that we started in Lugano. In support of this process, in my capacity as President of the G7 and together with the European Commission, I will host an international high-level expert conference for reconstruction in Berlin in October.
Meanwhile, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has vowed to recover the peninsula of Crimea and urged international allies to support the effort.
Я знаю, що Крим з Україною і чекаю, коли ми повернемось. Я хочу, щоб ви всі знали, ми точно повернемось. Коли ми повернемо і виправимо все те, що наробили окупанти на нашому українському півострові, що прийшло у Крим і увесь Чорноморський регіон разом з російською агресією, разом з російською зброєю. Катастрофічні загрози екології, небачена руйнація.
He further said that it was mandatory and also necessary to free Crimea from the occupation.
Я в це вірю 100%, щоб подолати терор, щоб повернути прогнозованість і безпеку нашому регіону, в Європі, в усьому світу треба здобувати перемогу. Перемогу в боротьбі проти російської агресії, а отже потрібно звільнити Крим від окупації. Там, де почалося, там і завершиться. І це буде ефективна реанімація міжнародного правопорядку.
Moreover, even European Union and NATO has reaffirmed that their support for Ukraine is there. The support came almost after 6 months after the war began. They further asserted that the annexation of Crimea will never be recognized.
We will never recognize the illegal annexation of Crimea and Sevastopol by the Russian Federation. We are deeply concerned about the human rights violations in the Crimean Peninsula, the disappearances, the torture, the killings, the persecution of Crimean Tatars, the intimidation and incarceration of journalists, lawyers, and human rights defenders. This is the dark reality of Putin's occupation.
NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg repeatedly said that the US military alliances will continue with their support for the conflict-torn country and said that they will stand with Ukraine as long as possible.
The European Union will tirelessly work with the Ukrainian authorities and our partners to expose these violations, to hold those responsible accountable, and to support the victims. We are with you.
European Council President Charles Michel also expressed his views and said that he condemns the use of Crimea by Russia in the ongoing war.
And since February, Russia has used Crimea as a strategic springboard to invade other parts of Ukraine from the south and to attack Ukraine with indiscriminate missile strikes. Russia is also using Crimea as a transit point to deport Ukrainian citizens through infamous filtration camps and where acts of torture and abuse have been reported.
French President Emmanuel Macron called on Russia to cease all military action, withdraw its forces, and use all forums of diplomacy to protect Ukraine, its territory, and its future.
Would like to call upon Russia to cease the military actions and to withdraw its forces from the territory of Ukraine and to use all forms of diplomacy in order to protect Ukraine, its territory, and its future. Recently, we've seen that the war is also about the Crimea, just as the rest of the Ukrainian territory of the past 6 months. And today, we've seen a lot of victims and casualties among the Ukrainian population, and I would like to express words of condolences to the families of the victims of this aggression.
Macron also said that the ramifications of the war were global.